Now, as for electrolyte balance, remember, oversimplified electrolytes, just think salts, okay? And even that may be, um, I don't want to insult your intelligence, but I think most people, when they hear the word salt, they think of one thing. They think of table salt, sodium chloride. There are thousands, tens of thousands of chemical compounds that can be referred to as salts. You're probably familiar with Epsom salt. It is magnesium sulfate, whereas table salt is sodium chloride. So there are many, many salts. And when salts dissolve in water, they're referred to as electrolytes. So anyway, electrolyte balance exists, not surprisingly, when the quantities of electrolytes that the body gains equals those that are lost. The kidneys will alter renal electrolyte losses to maintain the proper composition of body fluids and promote homeostasis. So, electrolytes come from foods, they come from fluids, and they come from metabolic reactions. That's the intake. The output is in perspiration, in feces, and in urine. So electrolyte intake, electrolytes of greatest importance to cell functions and release sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, chloride, sulfate, phosphate, bicarbonate, and hydrogen ions. You mostly get these things from food. They can be found in drinking water and other beverages. And some electrolytes are byproducts of metabolism. Ordinarily, a person will obtain sufficient electrolytes by responding to hunger and thirst. But severe electrolyte deficiencies may cause salt cravings, where you just are exactly what it says, you're craving salt. Body loses some of its electrolytes by perspiring. Sweat has about half the solute concentration of plasma. Quantities of electrolytes leaving vary with the amount of perspiration. More electrolytes are lost in sweat on warmer days and during strenuous exercise. Varying amounts of electrolytes are lost in feces. Greatest electrolyte output occurs as a result of kidney function and urine production. So how is this regulated? Concentration of the positive ions, the cations like sodium, potassium, and calcium, are particularly important. Certain concentrations of these are vital for impulses conducted along axons, muscle fiber contractions, maintaining cell membrane permeability. Potassium is important in maintaining resting potential of nerve and cardiac muscle cells. So you get your potassium too far out of whack, your heart can stop. And I have harped a good bit at various times about calcium. I think I may have pointed some of this out to you during the course of I know it did when we talked about hormones in chapter 13. I talked about these calcium ions being important for nerve impulse conduction, muscle contraction, clotting of blood. So it's very important to keep the calcium level regulated. So sodium ions make up 90% of the positive ions in extracellular fluids. Kidneys and a hormone called aldosterone regulate these. Aldosterone comes from the adrenal cortex. It increases sodium ion reabsorption in the, we'll just say kidneys for now, as well as the collecting ducts, once again, part of the kidneys, nephrons, part of the kidney. A decrease in sodium ion concentration in extracellular fluid will stimulate aldosterone secretion by way of the renin-angiotensin system. And again, we haven't covered that yet. We're going to backtrack and cover chapter 20 next. Aldosterone also regulates the concentration of potassium. One of the important stimuli for secreting aldosterone is having a rising potassium ion concentration. Now that is something called hyper, Hyper, which means high, excess. If a kid is hyperactive, they are overactive. So hyper, kale, Kal, emia, EMIA. If you go back to the beginning of the chapter, emia refers to the blood, hyper means high, kal means potassium. Symbol for potassium is the letter K. It comes from the Latin word kalium. So hyperkalemia, a rising potassium ion concentration, that will directly stimulate cells in the adrenal cortex to secrete aldosterone. So it will enhance renal secretion of potassium at the same time that it stimulates renal reabsorption of sodium. Let me put that in simpler terms. Aldosterone tells your kidneys to get rid of potassium and keep sodium. Okay. And here, this is just drawn out in a little, what I just told you is just drawn out in a flow chart there. Now, this section here talks about the calcium balance, calcium ion concentration. If it drops below normal, it will stimulate parathyroid glands to secrete parathyroid hormone or PTH. It will increase activity in the bone resorbing cells, which are called osteoclasts. Remember that osteoblasts with a B build bone. Osteoclasts tear bone down, and that releases the calcium out of the bones back into the bloodstream. Or as they say it, increases concentration of calcium and phosphate in extracellular fluids. Parathyroid hormone also indirectly stimulates calcium absorption from the intestine. It helps to activate vitamin D, so you absorb more calcium. It causes the kidneys to conserve calcium by reabsorbing the calcium, not letting it leave the kidney in the urine, but pulling it back into the blood. And it increases urinary excretion of phosphate. Increased phosphate excretion will offset increased plasma phosphate. So the net effect of the hormone is to return calcium ion concentration to normal levels. In other words, calcium gets too low, parathyroid hormone says, hey bones, that calcium that you stored a while ago when we had more than we need it back right now. Kidneys, don't get rid of that calcium. We need it. Keep it. Reabsorb it. Don't let it go out in the urine. Another thing it tells the kidneys is activate vitamin D so we can absorb more calcium from the food that we eat. Now, on the flip side, if your calcium level gets too high, then you will secrete calcitonin from your thyroid gland, and it will kind of do the opposite of all of that. It's going to tell the bones, hey, we got too much calcium around here. Store it in the bones for now. Here it is. Abnormal increase in blood calcium called hyper, which means high, calc referring to calcium, emia in the blood, so having too much calcium in the blood. It can result from hyperparathyroidism. If your parathyroids are making too much parathyroid hormone, you'll strip too much calcium out of the bones and put it into the bloodstream. Other sources of hypercalcemia, cancers, especially those of the bone marrow. All right, let's see here. Now, hypocalcemia can result from reduced availability of parathyroid hormone. So, let's see what I was looking for right there. But parathyroid hormone and calcitonin work opposite each other to keep blood calcium levels regulated. If your calcium level gets too high, you'll secrete calcitonin from your thyroid gland. It will tell the bones to store the calcium and the kidneys to excrete it. If your calcium level in the bloodstream gets too low, parathyroid hormone will tell the bones to release the calcium back to the blood. It'll tell the kidneys to keep the calcium in the blood, and it'll tell the kidneys to activate vitamin D to absorb more calcium. The negative ions, which tend to follow the positive ions, like phosphate and sulfate, they're partially regulated by active transport. which has limited capacity. If extracellular phosphate concentration is low, phosphate ions in the renal tubules are conserved. But again, let's mainly focus on the cations, the sodium, potassium, and calcium. And I don't want to go through that section right there. So I'm going to call that the end of the electrolyte balance.